Welcome back to another Daily Wisdom from Proverbs. Today we're in Proverbs chapter 22, and we're going to read through the whole chapter together. There's two major sections we're going to cover today, the first half and the second half of Proverbs 22. And in the first 16 verses, we're going to focus specifically on verses 6, 7, 13, and 15. So let's read through together. Verse 1, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold. The rich and the poor meet together. The Lord is the maker of them all. Verse 3, the prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. Verse 4, the reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. Verse 5, thorns and snares are in the way of the crooked. Whoever guards his soul will keep far from them. Verse 6, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he's old, he will not depart from it. Let's dwell on that proverb for a minute or two. What does it mean to train up a child? The Hebrew word here is hanuk. It means to dedicate your child. A lot of parents do some form of child dedication. We practice it at Bethel Temple at our church, where we dedicate a child. We say, as a parent, I want to train this child up. I want to raise him in a certain way. What this verse means is point him in the right direction, the way he should go. You're taking this child and you're aiming them out into the world, and you're saying, this is the way I want him to go. This is how I want to train him up. And later in this chapter, in verse 15, we'll look at one way of many to train a child. But yet we're going to train him. And then the second half of the verse is what I believe a principle rather than a promise, which is what most of Proverbs is. Good principles, not necessarily promises, but it's that when we train up a child in the way they should go, and we aim them in the right direction and release them out into the world after we as parents have had the responsibility to train them, then the principle is, even when he's old, he will not depart from it. I know that's been true in my life, that as I've gotten older, I can think back to some times when I received training as a child, and it comes back to me. And that's the goal for us as parents, that we instill into our children. We plant seeds when they're young. We aim them in the right direction. We get them ready and launch them out into the world and prepare them for becoming adults that fear the Lord. Verse 7, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender. We're going to pause on that proverb as well. This is a financial proverb. We've already seen many financial proverbs. We will see more. This one tells us that there's some caution that needs to be had before you go into debt for something, because the principle is the borrower, the person who receives the money, is the slave of the person who lends the money. You go to work so you can pay that mortgage, or so you can pay off that car loan, or so you can pay back the person that you owe money to. And in a sense, you become a slave to that person. You work for that person. Your income is going to them so you can pay back what they've lent to you, and also with interest on top of it. So be very, very careful what you go into debt for. Verse 8, whoever sows injustice will reap calamity, and the rod of his fury will fail. 9, whoever has a bountiful eye will be blessed, for he shares his bread with the poor. Be generous, in other words. Verse 10, drive out a scoffer, and then strife will go out, and quarreling and abuse will cease. 11, he who loves purity of heart and whose speech is gracious will have the king as his friend. 12, the eyes of the Lord keep watch over knowledge, but he overthrows the words of the traitor. Verse 13, we'll pause on this one for a moment. The sluggard says, the lazy person says, "Ooh, there's a lion outside. I shall be killed in the streets." So what does that mean? That means that lazy people, the sluggard, love to make excuses, and they'll make any excuse they can to avoid work. They'll go to great lengths to avoid work. Oh, I can't go outside. There might be a lion out there. I might get devoured. So rather than making excuses, Proverbs tells us to be diligent, and we're going to look at that in great detail later on. Verse 14. The mouth of forbidden women is a deep pit. He with whom the Lord is angry will fall into it. And verse 15, this ties back to verse 6 we just read about training up our children. Well, here's one way to do it. Folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline drives it far from him. Because we're sinful beings, we are born with a sin nature, and so consequently, what happens is folly, foolishness, is bound up in the heart of a child. We don't have to teach them to lie. We don't have to teach them to take things from other people. That comes naturally to us because we sin. And so what this verse is saying is, as a parent, I have to get that folly, that foolishness that's in them, and through discipline and training, in this case, they're talking about the rod of discipline. It doesn't necessarily mean beat your kids, but it means be firm with them. And you're not there as a parent to be their friend. You're not there to be buddies with them, necessarily for them to like you. You're there to train them and to discipline them, and it's for their good, because the rod of discipline will drive that folly far from them. Verse 16, whoever oppresses the poor to increase his own wealth or gives to the rich will only come to poverty. So now we get to verse 17 of chapter 22. And for the next several chapters, we get into this section called the 30 wise sayings. It goes from 22:17 all the way through chapter 24, verse 22. And the introduction to this section is found in verses 17 through 21. So let's look at that together. This is the introduction of these 30 wise sayings. 17, incline your ear and hear the words of the wise. Apply your heart to my knowledge, for it will be pleasant if you keep them within you, if all of them are ready on your lips. That your trust may be in the Lord. I have made them known to you today, even to you. Have I not written for you 30 sayings of counsel and knowledge to make you know what is right and true, that you may give a true answer to those who sent you? So that's why Solomon wrote these 30 wise sayings. And here comes the 30 wise sayings. We're going to cover 5 today, and then we'll go into the rest in the next couple days. So here's saying number 1. It's found in verses 22 and 23. Do not rob the poor because he's poor, or crush the afflicted at the gate, for the Lord will plead their cause and rob of life those who rob them. So justice for the poor is the theme of wise saying number 1. Wise saying number 2 is verses 24 and 25. Make no friendship with a man given anger, nor go with a wrathful man, lest you learn his ways and entangle yourself in a snare. Be very careful who you make friends with, because if you're hanging out with people who tend to be wrathful and angry, it says you wind up becoming like them. You learn their ways. Wise saying number 3 is found in verses 26 and 27. Be not one of those who gives pledges, who put up security for debts. If you have nothing with which to pay, why should your bed be taken from under you? That's expounding on what we saw in the earlier verse about not getting into debt, the borrower being servant to the lender. And in this case, you're such a servant to the lender that you're going into debt for things, and your own bed might get taken right out from underneath of you if you cannot pay your debts. So again, caution, caution, caution when it comes to debt and money matters. Wise saying number 4 is verse 28. Do not move an ancient landmark that your fathers have set. And finally, wise saying number 5, verse 29. Do you see a man skillful in his work? That man will stand before kings, and he will not stand before obscure men. 5 of the 30 wise sayings. We'll get into more tomorrow. Thanks for joining us for Daily Wisdom from Proverbs.